Wave to the clock, okay.
All right, good morning and welcome. For those that are joining us online, we've already had some discussions here live, so glad you can join with us. Let me introduce our topic and our speaker today. But first, I'm going to kind of recap a little bit about what we're doing. We're continuing our summer series on being prepared for the last stage of our life and how do we do that. That was what we decided to do for the summer. You know, we typically have weekly Bible studies most of the year, but the summer months we've done something a little different. So what we're doing is a series of things that'll hopefully help us in preparing for our next season of life or the end of life. So let me recap with you what we've done so far. In March, Larry Neese introduced the topic in the first session and told us what we're going to be doing and kind of set the stage for it. Then in April, I gave you a rough checklist of things that you might want to consider. As I said at the time, it's not the checklist, it's just mine, and that's a rough draft, one I'm working through. Hopefully that gave you some ideas of things that you need to plan for. In May, all that was general information at that time, just a general overview. We started getting more specific in May. Our GFC staff were here and led us in that session. Most of you were here, I think, to tell us what they can do and what they do in those times of need to help us counseling and preparing and so forth. And they provide a lot of professional kind of service because they're professionals at doing that. Continuing with that theme, we said if we want to give you some very valuable specific information, we've got to bring in the pros to do that. So that's what we're doing. In July, we're going to have a professional planner do a seminar for us. Now, this professional planner will not be here live. She is from Saskatoon, Canada. And because of the distance, she won't be here live. It'll be a Zoom-type conference. And that conference, she will be telling us what she does in her company, providing information, manuals, and helps to help us do a good job of planning for the last stage of our life. If you want that material, you can buy it on Amazon. But she'll be telling us that. She does these seminars all the time. She charges a fee. Fortunately, we had an anonymous donor that paid for this session, so we don't have to pay for it. But we can take advantage of her expertise, and she will tell us the type things we need to plan for. All right, then in August 9th, we will have a couple professionals again to talk about financial planning, the things that need to be considered there. We'll have an attorney here to talk about wills, trusts, estate planning. So all that's to give us more specifics to help us be better prepared so that when we need to do those kinds of things, we can contact the people of our choice to do them. But we have to go to the professionals to find out the detail. So we're going to have a second meeting in August the 16th, and on August the 16th will be a wrap-up session. In that wrap-up session, we're also planning to have a luncheon, covered dish luncheon, kind of a round table discussions, and we'll be able to share with each other about what we've learned through this series and steps we've taken, steps we need to take, and so forth. And I think that'll be beneficial to wrap it up. Now, that brings us back to today. Today, our topic is on funerals and planning for funerals. So we have a professional to do that. Walter Johnson from Oak Hill Funeral and Cremation Services is our speaker. Walter has more than 40 years experience in the funeral industry, so he's fully qualified to speak on this topic. He's a licensed funeral director, a licensed pre-need counselor, has served as a corporate trainer in a pre-need industry, so he knows what he's talking about. So whatever funeral home you decide to use in your planning and when the time comes, what we learn from Walter will help us be better prepared to know what services they can provide for you so that you know whether you want to take advantage of that before the time comes. So, Walter may want to tell us more about his experience and family and so forth. He lives in the Gray area, I believe, with his family, and he could tell us more about that. So we'll leave it up to him, and with that, I'll be quiet, and let's give a welcome to Walter Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here at Grace Fellowship today. And the warm welcome that I had from the minute I walked into the building, and just driving up on the campus, I was so impressed with the facilities and the campus and the warm welcome. Fellowship is the correct word. I was so welcomed into your group today. And I put welcome seniors on there. And somebody was talking about age over there a minute ago. Seniors is wrong. Y'all are some of the youngest older adults that I have ever encountered. I am just impressed. Some of y'all talking about going to Alaska. I'm like, sign me up. I'm ready to go. But one of those things is I will never be a senior. I really won't. Because I am a junior. My dad and I share the same name. He refuses to use senior after his name, even though he named me a junior. And I'm like, Dad, when you named me junior, you became a senior automatically. He says, nope, does not say that on my birth certificate. I am not a senior, even though he will be 89 in August. My dad is a Baptist minister, so I got the gift of gab from him. He says, yes, son, you have the gift of gab and the face for radio. So y'all just have to put up with that today. I am honored to have my beautiful assistant with me back there. That's my daughter, Kaylee. Everybody say hi to Kaylee. She is one of my pride and joys. My greatest accomplishments in life are my two children. I have a son, Zach, who is working in real estate in Raleigh. He attended Appalachian State like I did. And I know if I feel a cool breeze blow in here in East Tennessee, I did take some classes at ETSU as well, so that kind of smooths that over just a little bit. But he's in Raleigh. He works in real estate. Kaylee just graduated a few weeks ago from Daniel Boone High School, yeah, right here in Gray. And she will be going to UK in Lexington this fall. And so we're on a scholarship. She graduated with distinction, and we're really proud of her. So my two greatest accomplishments are my children. My wife, Pam, is an accomplished hairdresser. She still has her hair salon in Boone, so she is gone part of the week and goes up there and works in her hair salon and helps take care of her dad, who does have some early onset dementia. So we do that. We attend Buffalo Ridge Baptist Church here in Gray, or in Gray. I know I'm not in Gray today. And so we make our home there. We've got two dogs. Any of y'all like dogs? The dogs rule the roost at our house. So we have a golden doodle and a Chiweenie, and the Chiweenie is the boss of the house. He bosses the golden doodle. So that's us in a nutshell. Brother Larry mentioned my funeral experience. I started at 17 years old, so that told you my age. I'm now 58, 41 in my 41st year of funeral service. Full or part-time for 41 years. I've done some other things along the way, but always end up going back to funeral service. Why? Because I like helping people. I like serving people. And I think that's part of the Great Commission, being able to help people and helping them during the most difficult times of their life. I've buried people from 103 to the little babies who didn't even make it, and everything in between. If there's been a tragedy, I've dealt with it. I've dealt with double homicide, suicides. I've dealt with all things in between. I really need to write a book, but nobody would buy it, so, anyway. But that's enough about me, but I'm really glad to be here. And let me just say this. Brother Larry mentioned that I work for Oak Hill Funeral Home. I am a pre-need advisor, pre-need counselor, whatever you want to talk about it. That's how I make my living. I'm not here to promote that. God is good to me. He takes care of me. If you would like to work with me, I'm here. If you want to set up an appointment down the road, that's great. I'll be happy to work with you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to provide information that will help you regardless of where you want to plan. I want you to plan because it's the greatest gift that you can give your family. So we're going to talk about a topic that's hard to talk about. I mean, all of us in this room, who of y'all want to go to heaven? Anybody want to go today? Yeah. Anybody want to die to get there? But we don't want to die today, do we? In the rapture, yeah, that's the way I want to go. When my dad was pastoring the church he was at for almost 34 years, he had a retired sergeant major or something who was chairman of his deacon board. And he used to go, Walter, I want to go in the first batch. Meaning he wanted to go in the rapture. And I've adopted that terminology. I want to go in that first batch. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. So that's why I'm here to help and help to plan. But I got something I want to kind of relate that to. Let's remember back. Let's remember back before we had children. Let's remember back to when we were dating. Now, there's two subjects that's kind of sensitive, especially in the church. We don't like to talk about dying. And there's this little word we usually don't talk about in church. It's called sex. Okay? But remember back in those days, if we talked about that, just talking about it didn't make anybody pregnant, did it? There's only one time in history, as far as I know, that anybody ever got pregnant just by it being spoken. That's right, and that was the Virgin Mary, right? So the same thing goes to talking about funerals. Talking about your funeral won't make you dead, okay? So we're going to talk about them today. We're going to hit the nail right on the head, and enough about me, let's get it started. So we're going to cover some of the 5 most important questions that we get asked about funerals. And there's notepads in the back. If anybody didn't get a notepad, raise your hand. If you want one, a pad and a pen, we've got those. Kaylee will bring those, and Brother Gene's up. He'll help. Just stick your hand up. She'll bring you a notepad and a pen, or Brother Gene. But before we do, Brother Larry was talking about the things that are coming up. So let's look at that. There's 3 important areas that you want to make sure you've taken care of. Number 1 is your spiritual planning. We come to church, we attend church services, we're members of church here. I talked about being a member of Buffalo Ridge, but we were talking about Franklin Graham a few minutes ago. Billy Graham had this quote, 85% of church members are possibly lost. Have we thought about that? So if we look at 85% of this group, it would be something like that side of the room. The most important thing I want you to think about today is your spiritual planning. If you don't get anything else out of my presentation today, make sure job number 1 is taken care of. That you know that you're right with the Lord and that you know where you're going should that rapture occur. I was listening to an old recording by Anthony Berger, and it was talking yesterday, the song popped up about being left behind. There was a whole series of movies and books about that. What a sad state of affairs it would be should that rapture occur and your name was on this church roll and you were left behind and you came to church next Sunday and you were part of that 85% that said, where's the other 15% of our church members? Get that squared away. first and foremost before you do anything else. Then the second thing, of course, is what I'm here to talk about today, funeral and cemetery planning. And I know I pace, we talked about that a minute ago. I pace and I'm in front of the screen. But the funeral and cemetery planning, I'm going to talk about the funeral part of that. And then that estate planning. And he mentioned that you have speakers coming up in the summer. So those are the three most important topics. I'm going to hit on number 2. We like to plan ahead, don't we? I'm a natural planner. When we go on vacations, Kaylee will tell you, we plan all kinds of things. Where we want to go, what we want to do, where we want to eat. The places, we have places when we go to Myrtle Beach, which is probably our family's favorite place to vacate. We want to know where we want to go. We plan buying a home. Sometimes that doesn't happen. We plan weddings. They can get called off. We're planning Kaylee's college education. Things can come up, and those plans can change. And so we buy insurances. Why do we buy insurance? I like group participation. Why do we buy insurance? In case something happens. That's right. The in case, the what ifs. That's why we buy it. Does anybody think the what ifs we're going to die? We know it's appointed unto man once to die. That's not a what if. That's a given. So let's think about that part. It's equally important to plan for that what if because we know it's going to happen. Right? Can I get an amen on that one? There you go. Let me get my notes. I'm getting ahead of my own notes here. Okay. So, question number 1. If death occurred tonight, tomorrow, who would arrange for your funeral? This is a multiple choice answer. You can make little notes on your notepad there. Who would arrange for your funeral? Your spouse? Your son or daughter? More than one of your children? A good friend or neighbor? How many of us in this room still have one or both of our parents? Or what about this one? I'm really not sure. You don't have to share your answers. If that unthinkable happened, who would be doing it? Question number 2. Where's the money going to come from? Why do we buy life insurance? She says to have money to pay for our funeral. That's a good plan. That's a good plan. By the definition of life insurance is for the living. Why do we name a beneficiary to our life insurance if it's to pay for funeral expenses? I'm not arguing with you at all. But why do we name a beneficiary if it's not for them to get when we die? Good point. Okay. Your savings. That's a good one. What about your children's savings? Kaylee, you got enough in your savings to pay for my funeral? She says, no, I'm out to pasture. A good friend or neighbor. A bank loan taken out by my spouse. Or the proverbial, I'm not sure. So we think about that. Where's that money going to come from? That's a good one. Okay. Question number 3. What type of service do you want? Have you talked about that? Do you want the full service with a traditional funeral service, maybe here at the church or at a funeral home with the visitation? Or are you thinking about cremation? Have you discussed that with your family? Something that's become very popular now is, especially post-COVID, and I hate using that word COVID. I hope I never hear it again, but then I end up using it, is a visitation or just a graveside service. Both of those came up. And who do you want to officiate? I know y'all have a large pastoral staff. We do too. And you have former pastors that you've had. Or our favorite, I'm not sure. This is the most popular question. How much do you expect your funeral to cost? Again, multiple choice. Under $1,500, under $1,500. Any takers? between 15 and 35. You like that one? Okay. Between 35 and 75. Over 7,500. I have no idea. Nothing wrong with that. Okay? And I will tell you this, there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on the type of service that you want and the merchandise that you select. Okay? And we can go into detail on that one-on-one. So there's really, to even say there's an average, the National Funeral Director Association puts out a national average every year. It can depend, again. And you'll see those TV commercials, and they'll say, the average cost of a funeral service today is, Here again, talk to a licensed funeral professional in our area. Get that quote. So if death occurred tonight or tomorrow, what would you regret most about your final arrangements? The emotional burden it places on your survivors? No one would know what you wanted for yourself, or if it was a spouse. What about this one? That financial strain that it causes your loved ones if you haven't pre-funded. Okay? This is a good answer too. The possibility of emotional overspending. I see that one a lot. Pre-planning and pre-funding eliminates emotional overspending. The potential for disagreements and the conflict among the survivors over what to do. I've had that happen in funeral homes. Different family members argue about what do we want to do for Mama? What would she want? What casket would she want? What would they like? We'll take questions and comments at the end. Would that be okay? Okay, because then we'll have a mic and everybody can hear. Would that be okay? Yes. All right. And the number one answer, I wish I'd taken care of it ahead of time myself. So discussing details and setting aside the funds that you need helps alleviate or relieve the emotional and financial burden. It provides peace of mind for you and your family. It ensures that your final services will reflect your wishes. Here's a good one too. It can help with Medicaid and Social Security requirements. Number one reason a lot of people do pre-need planning is they're caught having to do a Medicaid spend down. Someone's going into a care facility for some reason, and they're needing to eliminate funds in their account. So we get a lot of those. Here's a good one too. It secures today's prices for a lot of the items that you need. The services and the merchandise, it locks those prices in. So you might get today's prices and not need the funeral for another 10 or 15, 20 years. Have y'all thought about that? Like if you're going to have to replace your car, Brother Dan, and you want the same car that you're driving today, and you're going to have to replace it in 10 years. If I'm your car dealer and you drove up to me today and said, I want to pay for the same car at today's price, but I want to pick it up in 10 years. Can you do that? Okay. And Miss Mary, you know your refrigerator's going to go out. If you drove over to Lowe's and said, I want the same refrigerator I've got now, 5 years from now, because I know mine's going to be worn out, but I want to pay today's price, but get it delivered 5 years from now. Can you do that?
It'll probably take that long because of...
Miss Mary had the right answer. The answer. She says it'll probably take that long to get it because of delivery problems, right? And supply and demand. Yeah, but there's nothing else that I know of that you can pay today's price and get it delivered in the future, except for funerals. Yes, sir.
I want to ask you a question.
Okay, I'm going to take questions at the end. Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you. You can be my first question at the end, okay? All right, thank you. But pre-need planning, you pay today's price for that funeral when we deliver the funeral. Those prices on the services and the merchandise are locked in at today's price. And there are others, there can be tax purposes. So, what are the steps? Where do I begin? So back in the back, and I saw that some of y'all picked those up. This is a planning guide. This is the first step. How many of y'all have had homework in recent years? There you go. Yeah, that's good. This would be your homework to start in a planning guide. And this is where you put down your thoughts, your wishes, your background information. It asks a lot of pertinent questions. It has a lot of good thought starters. And so then when you meet with a funeral planning professional, you bring this in, whether it's me, whether it's someone else. You've got a lot of the paperwork already started. So avail yourself of those planning guides. That's what it's for. So where do I start? Step number 1, determine your wishes. Okay? And I think my notes are out of order. Okay? That's okay. So determine. Start by understanding specific requests you and your loved one may have regarding your funeral wishes. Do you want that traditional funeral? Is that what I want? Do I have spaces in a cemetery somewhere? Do I want to utilize those spaces? Do we want cremation? Has cremation been a tradition in your family before? Do I want to deviate from the burial tradition of my family and go to cremation? Those are the thought processes. So we want to follow those requests. Number 2, select a funeral home. Do you have a funeral home of choice that your family has used before? But be particular about who you want to use. Make sure you're using a reputable location that meets your values and provides the services that you require. Consider factors such as location, pricing, their values, their reputation, and review their customer reviews online for their funeral home. There may be something placed online that you don't know about. Okay? So you want to look those things up. Check them out. Ask your friends and neighbors. Check with your church leadership. Who's the best to work with? Do you have a referral? Those are the best thing. Then number 3, consult with that funeral professional. That's an important thing. Set up a time to meet with that funeral director or that pre-planning advisor, such as myself, and talk to them about it. Tell them what their wishes are. Discuss those options. Talk to them about what your wishes are and see where they want to go. Talk to them about their experience. How long have you been a funeral director? How long have you been in the business? How many locations have you worked at? Is it someone who's worked at every funeral home in town? Or have they been steady? How long have they been a funeral home advisor or a pre-need advisor? What did you do before you became a funeral advisor? Pre-need advisor. Did you sell used cars? Did you sell mattresses? Or do you have 20, 30 years of experience? Do you know what you're talking about? Do you have the experience? And then they can guide you through the process, the recommendations, and the things that you need. Okay? Number 4, decide on what type of service. After you've had that conversation with your family, determine the type of funeral service that best reflects your life and your personality. Options may be that traditional service that we talked about, where the body's present at the funeral home or the church, the visitation, the funeral, the graveside service, or it might be a combination of something else, the memorial service, a celebration of life, cremation. And then consider the location, the times, the date, and all of those types of things. Then select the venue. Do you want to use the funeral home chapel? Do you want to use the church sanctuary? Do you want to just have a graveside service? Is there a community center that you want to use? A community venue. Do you want to use the golf course country club? You know, there's all kinds of things. When I first started in the funeral service 40 years ago, everything was cut and dried. They were cookie cutter funerals. Everybody went to the church. It was the visitation at the funeral home the night before. Everybody went to the church. We went to the cemetery. The pastor read some scripture and a poem. We had 3 hymns and it was over and done. Things are different now. And cremation. Well, you know, cremation was, we probably did 1 a month. And the reason I remember we did 1 a month when I started, I usually got to take the bodies to the crematory. And that was fun for me because I started in Mountain City. Any of y'all know where Mountain City is? That's where I grew up. And of course, we didn't have a crematory. There's still not a crematory in Mountain City. We took them to Bristol, to Oakley Cook. And that was big for me as a teenager. I would get to drive to Bristol and we would drop the body off, and I got to wait in Bristol. So I got to go to the Bristol Mall and go shopping, go to lunch, you know. I got to go to Duff's. Anybody remember Duff's? Yeah. I live to eat. I don't eat to live. And so I'd spend the day in Bristol. At the end of the day, I go back, pick up the cremated remains, and drive back to Mountain City. And I got paid, too. What a great day. So, but I'd only get to do that about once a month. You know, because cremations are different. Now, some funeral homes and some locations have as high as 50% cremation rate. So it's different. And then funerals, guys, tell me, they're customized to the family. Everything is different. We have open mic funerals. You know, the pastor gets up and all he is a facilitator. You know, I can't even think, officiant. He officiates. You know, the children get up and read poems and they talk and they give the eulogies. And then they pass the mic around through the crowd who wants to talk about the deceased. You know, and that goes on for a long time. You know, every kind of music is presented. You know, everything is customized. Is there anything wrong with that? No, traditions have changed from what they were years ago. So that service can be customized. I'm gonna fall off the stage. You know, so it can be customized exactly to the way that you want it. And then arrange for transportation. Coordinate the transportation of the deceased. Usually the funeral home takes care of that. Do you want to use a family car, the limousine going from the place of service to the cemetery, those types of things. But make sure the people from out of town have the directions to know where to go if it's somewhere different. You know, make sure that those things are all taken care of as well. And then notify friends and families. Here's a question. How much is an obituary in the newspaper? Anybody have a guess? Outrageous? Yeah. They're between $300 and $400 to run one time in the newspaper now. And I hope nobody in here is from the Johnson City Press and starts throwing half-eaten donuts at me. But yeah, they're between $300 and $400 to run one time. So you may decide, I don't want an obituary. So utilize other methods if you don't want to use that expense. Now, I'm not advocating that you don't run an obituary, but just weigh the cost. But you can use phone calls, emails, social media, and all of our locations posted on our website. So you can lift that, post it on Facebook, Instagram. What are all the other ones, Kaylee? I can't think of them. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twatter, I don't know. What are all of those out there? I can't think of all of them. You know, there's a ton of them. But you can let them know, a phone call. And there's a place in the back of the planning guide, if I'm not mistaken, where it can say notify other people. If I passed away, Kaylee might not know to let so-and-so that I used to work with in Charlotte know. There's a place down there where you can, or there used to be in the old ones, where you could notify certain friends and relatives that they might not think of. Then plan the order of the service. Work with the funeral director, the pastors of the church, and plan that service. That can include the favorite scriptures of the loved one, if they had a favorite poem, readings, the songs they want. Like I said, we've had all kinds of songs played. Some that I wouldn't even have ever thought would have been played in our funeral home chapel. I don't know how many of y'all have ever been to Oak Hill Funeral Home, been in our chapel. I've got a head nodding over here. But we have a beautiful chapel. Looks just like a small church. We can seat about 250 in there. But what would be the balcony of that chapel is closed in, and that's where my office is. So when I'm in my office and there's a service going on, I hear everything and actually can look out the window and see what's going on in that chapel. So when the music is playing, I hear it loudly. And if I'm on the phone, it's kind of distracting. So it's kind of disturbing to me when I hear Highway to Hell played at a funeral. You know, but you hear everything these days, you know. So select the songs that are important to you. You know, if you've got a favorite hymn, you've got a favorite group. Maybe you like bluegrass. You want bluegrass music played. You know, that's a lot better than the song I just mentioned, you know. So incorporate those into elements of the service. And then arrange for post-funeral gatherings. You know, we're still in the South. We're still in the Bible Belt. Churches, and I guess y'all have that too, where we bring the family back to the church and feed them. We have that. Do y'all do that, Brother Dan? You know. Depends. You know, some families want that, some families don't. Especially my church back in Boone, before we moved down here. You know, they showed up, you know, with the fried chicken and the potato salad and the pound cakes, you know, just about the minute anybody passed away. But then the church would feed them. But arrange for that, especially if you have out-of-town guests that are coming. You know, if the church isn't providing the meal, if you don't want it catered to your home, there's restaurants where you can have that if you want to do that gathering. I had a family the other day, and they were talking about it. And they said these relatives, extended family, showed up at their mother's home after the service, and nobody really knew them. And they stayed, and they stayed, and they stayed. They had an 11 o'clock service. Actually, it was just a graveside service, so they were back at their home by 11:45 and had catered a 12 o'clock meal. And she said they finally left at 4:30 in the afternoon. And they were tired, you know, and they had a lot of things they needed to get to. And she said those out-of-town people that nobody knew were the last ones to leave. So consider some of those things if you're planning a post-service gathering. I thought, man, if y'all had done something at a restaurant, you know, it could have closed out a whole lot easier than if you'd done it at the home. Okay, so once you've got all of those, pre-arrange and pre-fund. That's where you want to meet again with that funeral professional and take care of those things. So the pre-arrangements and prepayment options are available. So you want to talk to them about it. It fulfills your responsibility to your family, and it's the most loving and caring gift that you can do. I've met with families for years and years and years. Sit around that conference table. How many of y'all have ever had to plan a funeral? It's not easy to do, is it? It's so much easier for us as funeral directors and for you as family members as well. When we sit around that conference table and open the file and say, Mom or Dad came in several years ago, pre-planned and pre-funded this. Basically, all we have to do today is double check some information, see if any changes need to be made for the obituary, and set the time and the date for the service. Everything's taken care of. Someone said there's like 101 questions that we as funeral directors ask a family when somebody's passed away, and we do the at-need conference. I've never counted. But there's a lot. There's a lot of questions that we cover. So when they're already asked and they're already answered by the loved one who's left us, it gives you time to grieve, and it gives you time to celebrate their life instead of planning their funeral. You don't have to worry about where's that money coming from, like we talked about on that slide earlier. Where's that money coming from? It's already there. What we do when you come in and pre-arrange at a funeral home, we set up a trust account for you. Miss Jane, am I reading that correctly? Okay. What we would do, Miss Jane, if you came in, and I just thought of the Beverly Hillbillies, Miss Jane, you know. I am old, okay? I am a senior. Senior moment, okay? But Miss Jane, if you came in and pre-funded, is this your daughter? Yep. Okay, good. I'm glad you brought your daughter with you. That's good.
This is my middle daughter.
The middle daughter. Okay, the middle daughter always keeps the peace, right? That's right, okay. Thinking about my middle sister. I have two sisters, so. But if, Miss Jane, if you came in and pre-funded, you can bring your daughter with you, okay? Yes, that would be great. But we would take the money that you prepaid for your funeral and we would put it in an irrevocable trust. If you noticed a lot of the publications that we have, and my shirt says Global Atlantic Financial Group, we particularly use Forethought Insurance Company, which is owned by Global Atlantic. I'm not necessarily promoting them. They're just the ones that we use. We put the money in an irrevocable trust. It's in your name. It remains your money until the time Mom should pass away. Then we file a claim against it, just like filing a claim against life insurance we were talking about a minute ago. They pay the funeral home the portion needed that was prearranged for your funeral. Then we would name daughter the beneficiary for any overage that's in that account, because that irrevocable trust grows just like a CD does in the bank. So it will continue to grow from the time that you put that money in to the time that you pass away. So if there's anything left, daughter will get it. Okay? What she does with it, if she wants to divide it with the other two sisters, that's up to her. Or if she wants to go to Bermuda, that's up to her. But that's why it does that. Now, there was a key word I put in there. Did anybody catch that word? There's a word that may have sounded strange. A funeral director or a pre-need counselor term. Irrevocable. Does anybody know what that means? Cannot be taken out. Okay. So I mentioned a while ago that one of the busiest times that we have, or when a lot of people come in and fund their funerals, it's when they're having to go in and do a Medicaid spend down because mom or dad or spouse is having to go into a care facility. And Medicaid makes them spend down their assets. Okay. Somebody said life insurance a while ago. Was that you, hon? Somebody over here. Somebody was talking about life insurance. Life insurance is not irrevocable, per se. 99.9% of the time, a standard life insurance is not irrevocable. Which means when Medicaid comes in and you're having to do a Medicaid spend down, the cash value of that $10,000 life insurance policy is an asset in the eyes of Medicaid. So what happens, they say, Mary, you have to cash in your life insurance. That $10,000 life insurance has got a cash value of $6,500. You've got to cash it in and give us the $65,000. Or you have to assign it to the funeral home. Okay, that can be done. It's a long, hard, drawn-out process. But if you've got an irrevocable trust set up, they can't touch it because we make them irrevocable. It also means daughter can't cash it in and get the money and go to Bermuda. She has to wait till you pass away and get what's left. Is that clear as mud? That's plain and simple Mountain City country boy talk, okay? But that's why pre-planning is also important. It's that Medicaid benefit. So that is a very important factor about prearranging as well, is that pre-need planning. You'll know exactly what mom wants. She can pick out her service, her casket, if she wants burial, all of those things, and they're taken care of. It's a lot easier. And what I was talking about earlier, going in with a family, I have yet in my 41st year of funeral service, walked in and sat down with a family. When mom and dad have pre-planned, I have yet to have a family say, I wish mom and dad hadn't have done that. I wanted to pay for it. I wanted to plan the funeral. I wanted to pay, to take care of everything. Has yet to happen. It's always the reverse. I'm so glad they did that. It's made everything so much easier for us. It's a loving and caring gift that we can leave those that are left behind. So now I want us to be able to celebrate life with the quality and care that it deserves. That's what I'm about. That's where I want us to be. That's what I want us to be able to do. That's what I want you to pre-plan. Why I want you to pre-plan. So I'm going to take just a few questions. Before we do that, I did want to mention we do have some door prizes back in the back. Kaylee was signing people up for those. There is a little slip of paper that I ask you to put your name, address, phone number, email address. If you want me to contact you and offer additional information, put a check mark by your name. If you do not want me to contact you by text or email, don't put a check mark and I will not contact you. Okay, it's quite that simple, but please register for the door prize. I've got 3 nice little things we're going to give away here in just a few minutes. So make sure you've done that. If you haven't registered, again, if you'll raise your hand, Kaylee will bring you a slip of paper and just keep them up till she gets to you, and we can do it that way. But I am going to, Brother Dan and Brother Larry, I think, are going to bring some handheld mics so that we can hear the questions that you might have. The gentleman in the orange had a question mid-conversation, so I want to take his question first.
Just one. Brother John.
I have 2 important questions on my mind right now.
Okay.
We buried our only son 29 years ago, Father's Day,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
and which is coming up. But I know when we planned his funeral, the wooden casket was $80 or $8,500 for just the casket. Wow! I wonder how much caskets have gone up since then, and also, if you want your body to go to the church, the transportation and all, how much more does it cost now than it did 29, 30 years ago?
Okay, so did everybody hear the question? And first of all, my condolences. I know Father's Day is this weekend. That's difficult. I know when we remember loved ones. My mother passed away 26 years ago yesterday. So those days are always hard. So my heart goes out to you. I want you to know that. Thank you. You'll be in my prayers Sunday. I want you to know. $8,500 29 years ago. So everybody heard the question. He's wanting to know how much would that casket equivalent today with price increases. It would be impossible for me to give you a price unless I knew the manufacturer and the name of that casket to say exactly. If you listen to talking heads on television, and I'm talking about Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, any of those talking heads, they'll tell you the inflation rate is anywhere from 4 to 5%, depending on who you talk to. and you feel it every time you go to the gas pump or go to the grocery store, Walmart, wherever you shop. The inflation rate or the price increases on funerals is nowhere near that high. However, we do usually see prices increase, but it's not that near that high of percentage, okay? So if you want me to contact you or want me to research that for you, I could try to come up with that, but I would have to see a copy of that contract and know the name and the manufacturer of that and try to research that out for you. Okay, the second part of his question was, what is the cost pretty much today of bringing a body to the church? That's part of the transportation cost that's in the package that we do. So it's part of it's factored in. Usually you'll see transportation, there's a removal fee, which is picking up the body, bringing it to the funeral home, and there's transportation to and from the church, cemetery, etc. So it's usually in that, and it's all factored in. So to line item out of that, what's the amount of going to the church, it's in that fee of transportation to the church, cemetery, etc. Okay, did that answer the question in at least a roundabout way?
Well, with gas going up and down, I have no idea really what the cost would really be.
Yes, and he said with the price of gas going up, you really don't know what it would be. And that's why we as funeral homes have to have price increases. We have to fluctuate our prices as well. Thank you. Thank you very much for those questions.
Okay, someone else in the back.
Yeah, I have a question. So you're not going to be buried in Tennessee. I already have a plot. The grave sites wait for me. So what does my husband do? Go to a funeral home and tell them this is where I'm sending her in Cobleskill, New York?
Yes.
And then the funeral home makes arrangements with the funeral home up in New York, and then it goes on from there?
Absolutely. Did everyone hear the question? And did that go out on the live stream, or do I need to repeat it? It went out. Okay. Yes, that's what we call transfer of remains to another funeral home. We could, yes, your husband would need to work with a funeral home here. We would prepare your body if you want to have I'm getting feedback. If you want to have a service here as well, we could, after the service is here, we would transfer the body to a receiving funeral home there, and they would arrange for burial. Is your vault included with your cemetery property?
Well, I have a gravestone with everything on it.
Mm-hmm. Do they require a burial vault, an outer burial container?
The coffin, and that's it, I
Just
guess.
just the casket, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would transfer you up there, or the funeral home here. I always say we, as the sending funeral home. They would arrange for the transportation, either a flight
Yeah.
or ground transportation, and a flight would be less expensive.
The flight would be less expensive.
Yes, and then the receiving funeral home would meet the plane, transfer you there to that funeral home, and arrange for the internment.
Okay.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yes, and cremation, you said cremation went up to, would you say 50%? Is that what you just said?
Not in price, the cremation rate, the number of cremations done by the funeral homes.
Oh, I see, okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Miss Mary.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. If there's a transfer, and we already have plots in the stone also in another state, can the transfer be made to the cemetery without having to go through a funeral home up there also?
No. Well, yes, no, maybe. If that cemetery has a licensed funeral director on staff, then yes, it can go directly to the cemetery. But a burial of a body requires, in most every state, the presence of a licensed funeral director. So we can find out from that cemetery for you, or the funeral home of your choice can find out. And then sometimes it can go directly to the cemetery, but usually it requires the involvement of a receiving funeral home.
To get the cheapest cremation, is it to go through a funeral home, or you see advertisements for these national cremation things? There's one in Jonesboro I know there. What's your experience in that? We have to count the cost.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much for bringing that up, and thank you for your question, Miss Mary. I also work 1 day a week at Mountain Empire Cremations in Jonesboro. Yep, that's it. So we are the low price leader in cremations in the Tri-Cities. So it's basically a streamed down cremation service. All we do are cremations and very basic burials at Mountain Empire. So you will get a basic cremation. I had a little old man, and this absolutely cracks me up, but I think of it every day and every time I'm talking about cremations. I had this little man, he was as country as cornbread, okay? He came in, and I said, well, tell me a little bit, sir, about what's on your mind today. He slapped the table, and he says, I want your burn and return plan. And I said, sir, you're at the right place. Basically, what he wants is what we do most of at Mountain Empire Cremations. We pick up the body, we cremate them, and we return the cremated remains with the death certificates to the loved ones. So Mountain Empire, you can shop us, and most people come back to us. So if you want to work with us there, I'm there usually on Wednesdays. Of course, I'm here today, so I'll be there tomorrow. But we are the low price leader. So thank you for that question. Some of the nationally advertised places, they're okay if that's what you want to do, but we usually can compete with them as well.
Do we contact you for that, or?
You can call Mountain Empire, and there's information for them on the table.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about transportation with a body. Once the person is cremated, can anybody transport those remains, like from home to church or to another state? Or do you have to have, what is it, you said a funeral director?
Yes, thank you for that question. If you didn't hear the question, because I think the mic wasn't quite on, but she asked if cremated remains, the transport of cremated remains required the use of a funeral director. No, they do not. It is still human remains. It's just in a different format. It's still mom, it's still dad, it's still brother, sister, but it is in a different form. So no, it does not require the use of the services of a funeral director. Anyone can transport cremated remains. Now, if you are flying with cremated remains, there are permits and things that we need to take care of for you. But if they're just being put in a car, taken somewhere, you're fine. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
In the local area, which are the services, the cremation services that are in-house? So,
Okay. Great. That's a great question. And I'm running out of time. I think we're supposed to end up at about 11. So what I'm going to do, I'll hit this question as I close up, okay? So these are the primary locations where I work. If you are interested in contacting me, you can contact me at those locations. I have business cards and flyers on the back table for those locations. But since I am working with y'all today, I also serve, you want me to back up? Okay, they're on the table back there as well. But it's Oak Hill Funeral Home in Kingsport and Mountain Empire Cremations in Jonesboro. And that's my infomercial for those two. And I have business cards for you, sir. They're on the table. But I also represent any of these funeral homes in our Tri-City area. So we have Tetrick Funeral Home in Johnson City, Woodall, Anderson, and Duggar, Appalachian Funeral Home, Tetrick and Elizabethton, Hathaway Percy and Elizabethton, Valley Funeral Home in Irwin, Oakley Cook in Bristol, Blevins Funeral Home in Bristol, and Acard Funeral Home in Bristol, and Garrett in Damascus. So if you're interested in any of those funeral homes, I'm happy to work with you at those locations as well. The two locations that have crematories on site are Oakley Cook and Tetrick Elizabethton. Those are the ones that have crematories on the property. So what we do, for instance, if you're working with me at Oak Hill, we would transport you. These are all in our group, okay? So we would transport you to Oakley Cook or Tetrick Elizabethton, whichever one could get to you first and be the fastest service to your family. So you don't leave our care, custody, and control. You're still in our service, but you're not on our premises. Some of them have cemeteries, some don't, vice versa. Some of them have crematories. Some of them have neither. Okay? All right, one more question. I'm a minute over.
Okay, I had a question. My sister just passed in April, and much to my surprise, her daughter ordered her coffin, her casket, from Costco for about a third of the price that was quoted at the funeral home. Is this a trend? Is this universally accepted? And are you seeing more of this, or how does that work?
Thank you. And this is a question that we do get. We offer at all of our funeral homes caskets on a wide variety of prices. And when I say that, we're talking most of our locations from about, and I'm going to dig myself a hole on this, but most of our locations are going to have caskets from about $1,100, $1,200 up, okay? So I don't know what she paid at Costco, but at Costco she probably paid shipping, and if she had ordered it ahead of time, she would have had to store it somewhere. Here's what happens with that. I've had experience with those. I had one family who ordered that. This was when I was working at the funeral home in Boone. They ordered an online casket. Their visitation started at 6 o'clock on this particular, I think it was a Thursday evening. Their casket arrived at 4:50 p.m. They had already missed their family viewing time because there was no casket there. When the casket did arrive, it was damaged. We had to use it anyway. It was their casket. So there's release, hold harmless paperwork that they have to sign. It's theirs. If they had purchased the casket from us, we have a warehouse. Minutes away, we can get a replacement casket if it comes damaged. So there's pros and cons to that. Some people just want to do it that way. And if that's what they opt to do because they're saving a few bucks, they can do it. There's a gentleman in a neighboring county within an hour's drive from here who makes caskets. He makes beautiful caskets. And I've seen a lot of his caskets in a North Carolina market. And it's the same thing. That's your casket. If that's what you do, because it's yours, So it's just one of those things that we deal with. Are we good on time? Okay, yeah.
I'd like to know if you're cremated.
Okay, here's the mic.
Okay, if you're cremated and you don't have a burial plot, where do the cremated remains go?
Okay, that's up to the family. There's a lot of choices with cremated remains. My preference and what I strongly recommend to families is a permanent placement, such as a cemetery, a columbarium, which is basically a mausoleum for cremated remains. So that's what I recommend. And the reason for that is, and I'll tell a story, but the family can keep those cremated remains at home. They can scatter cremated remains, and I'll go into detail on that. But there's a lot of different options. There's probably more options with cremation than there are burial. But I recommend placement for a couple of reasons. If you scatter the cremated remains, that's it. They're gone. unless you have a keepsake urn with a smaller portion. And my daughter will testify to that, if it was the property that we owned and my wife scattered to me, it would be a Walmart parking lot before long. But at least my wife would come visit, okay, because she loves Walmart. We never go anywhere. We went to Aruba back in the end of May, and I think it was the only trip we ever took. My wife didn't go to Walmart, okay? But the property can change, and you have to own the property or get permission from the owner of the property if you scatter on it, okay? Because those are human remains. And there's EPA guidelines. A lot of people, when I worked in Boone, they wanted to scatter on the Parkway or Grandfather Mountain. You have to get permission from the National Park Service if you're going to scatter on the Parkway, or from Hugh Morton's organization if you were going to do Grandfather Mountain. Secondly, if you're keeping the cremated remains at home, this is your urn, okay? Your children know this is mom, okay? So you're precious, and your grandchildren. Maybe a few great-grandchildren, okay? But after the great-grandchildren who knew you, what about the great-greats that didn't know you? Yeah. How does this become precious? Great-great-grandmother? I didn't know her. And I'll tell you the story that goes with this. I was working at our funeral home in Sparta, North Carolina, as a funeral director. One Saturday, we were extremely busy. It was closing time for the funeral home. I had turned the lights off in the funeral home, was ready to transfer the phones, was reaching for the phone to transfer it, and it rang. And this guy on the other end says, "Oh, good, you're still there. I need to talk to you right now. Can I come up?" And I'm like, if you're in the funeral business and somebody tells you that, you listen, okay? It's just like if somebody says, "I've got to come talk to you, Pastor. I've got to talk to you right now." I said, "Okay, but come to the back door. The lights are already off, but I'll talk to you. Come around to the back." And up there, everybody knew it. So I'm standing at the back door, glass doors. Here comes this guy in a pickup truck. Literally comes in on 2 wheels. Jumps out, and he's got a box. And I recognize it. It's an urn box. In that box is a brass urn. He comes in, he says, "I bought 2 rental properties. I'm remodeling them. And I was up in the attic and I found this here." It came from Grandview Memorial Funeral Home. He says, "I have no idea who it belongs to." Well, it was already then 6:15 on Saturday afternoon, so I left it until Monday morning until I got back up there. And the administrative lady and I did the research on that urn. We could search it by the number, the cremation number. We could search it, and we found out who Grandpa was. We called every phone number that we had associated with that person. Every one of them disconnected, or no answers. Or if it rang, it was somebody else. They didn't know who it was. So we sent certified letters to every address that we had. All of them came back. So when I left Grandview Funeral Home, employment there 4 years ago, Grandpa was still sitting in my office. I'd come in every morning, hang up my suit coat, or top coat, or what have you. I'd say, "Good morning, Grandpa." And leave in the night. "Good night, Grandpa. See you next time," So these things happen, So if we do a permanent placement somewhere in a columbarium or a cemetery, that family has some place to go back to on dates, anniversary dates, like when my mother passed, the anniversary death, on Mother's Day, Father's Day, or Christmas, Memorial Day, and those dates. There's some place of memorial to go back to. And that doesn't happen. So there's a lot to think about in cremation. There's more to think about than it's the cheapest option, which it is. But A lot to think about. Did that answer your question in a great, big, long, drawn-out way? Okay. Well, I'm telling y'all, this has just been a great, great day for me and a wonderful opportunity. I can't thank Larry and Gail enough for allowing me to be here today and for the opportunity. Now, they did ask Dr. Phil Hoskins to come, and we were going to co-host this. Phil's on a Caribbean vacation right now somewhere, and so if he watches this, this is for you, Phil. So Kaylee's going to bring up our door prizes and the slips. We've got 3 door prizes today. So we've got those, but there are plenty of brochures back there. I'll be back to answer any individual questions. And if you set up an appointment with me, please, I would love to talk to you individually and work with you if you want to do that. So we've got 3 door prizes. Kaylee's got these for you, and she's going to draw and deliver. So did everybody put their name in that wants to? Okay. The first one we're going to give away is coffee. Anybody drink coffee? Besides my daughter? This is one of the best coffee mugs you'll ever use. It will keep them hot for a long time. And reach in there, hand it back to me. Thank you. And this is Joy Cook. Got to be present to win. Pardon?
She wouldn't want it anyway because she has given me cups.
Oh, really? Well, it's a good thing it wasn't the umbrella then, right? How about Mr. Paul Bellamy? Mr. Paul, yay, congratulations. You think about me every time you drink coffee now. Okay, Mrs. Bellamy. There you go. The next one we've got for you is this. Anybody like picnics or pack a lunch? This will hold anything. This will hold a whole chicken, I think. So a little insulated lunch bag. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Vanna. Gary Fowle. Mr. Gary, congratulations. Fowler. Well, this one says fowl. We left the ER off. So fowl, I said you could put a chicken in there. So there you go. All right. And then this one you will love. Any golfers in the house? No golfers? One. I hope you win. A big golf umbrella. Kaylee wanted this one herself. So if anybody doesn't want it, I bet she'd take it off your hands. Here we go. And this is Art Pierce. Mr. Art, yay! Congratulations. Again, thank you all. Mr. Larry?
All right, let's thank Walter for coming today. We appreciate you coming, sharing your expertise with us. And I hope you have a better appreciation of what's involved in a funeral service.
Thank y'all.
And
My pleasure.
Spur us on a little more of thinking about pre-planning and thinking through things, decisions we need to make with our family. That's important. I'll add one thing about it. It's hard to do that when you're emotional at the very time. Now, I want to tell you a real quick story. This was a true story a pastor told me about. Husband died. The wife was trying to plan the funeral out with the pastor and probably a funeral home director involved in it. And they got down to the songs, and she said,
7 to 10.
I want to sing Jingle Bells. And they said, we've never done that before. Are you sure? She said, yes, Jingle Bells is what I want. That's his favorite song. So that's what they did. And then after the service, she was talking to him. She said, oh, Pastor, I didn't mean jingle bells. Is that it was ring those golden bells or something like that. Of course, it was too late. So I'm just saying, when you're emotional, you don't think clearly. And that's why it's important to think those things ahead of time and plan it out. So we appreciate Walter being here. If you have more questions, you can think he'll be here. And by the way, leave your name tags on the table. I didn't mention, but next month when we have Elaine Lozinski to do that seminar for us, I have one of her binders. If anybody's interested in seeing it, you can get an idea of what kind of material she has available. So that's available if you want to take a look at it. So let's close in prayer, and we'll hope to see you next month. Father, thank you so much for just allowing us to gather together and just think through things that we need to be prepared for. We just pray that everyone here has their relationship with you just on solid ground, and we're waiting for you to call us out. Thank you, Lord. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.